Three, two, one. Hello and welcome to our Mindful Leadership podcast with my co-host Natasha Rocha. Hello, Natasha.
Hi, John. Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome. So good to see you again.
Absolutely. And we're here to chat about, it'll be a range of subjects, but we're going to
hmm
start with talking about time and energy and abundance and lack and all of these things, both in our more traditional roles that we've had in our lives, and then also our experiences of since we've stepped out of the matrix and into our own businesses. What our explorations into time and energy have become. And I also wanted to acknowledge we've not been on for a couple of weeks. We were busy doing a podcast with another guest, and I was on holiday vacation last week. So excited to be back and catching up. So let's start. We had a bit of a chat before, Natasha, but I would love to hear from
hmm
you. So there was this message from my guides in meditation this morning, which was that we have all the time and energy
hmm
we need in every single day, in every single moment to progress or even complete all the things that are important to us. But we don't have enough time and energy for all those energy leaks, those
hmm
distractions and rabbit holes. And I love that. And so my question to get us started, Natasha, is, and maybe you'd like to take us back earlier in your experience, like what sort of challenges have you experienced with lack or abundance of time and energy?
hmm Yeah, no, it's beautiful because it's something that keeps coming up that I keep refining and defining. And it's so interesting because there's so much of that conditioning. And it was one of those things that, like, growing very much up in like that corporate world, that you needing to be late, that you needing to be on time, you can't be late, you needing to be late. And it was quite interesting because my dad was always late for stuff. And it made me really, really nervous. And I knew at school that I get to school really, really nervous if I was getting there before the bell rang. And so that kind of like really informed later on time. And I knew that when I reached the corporate world, I used to get really, really frustrated in meetings when people were late, because there was very much that, why is your time more important than mine? Right. And I knew that, I think it was HP used to fine people every time they were late, because if you started looking at the amount of people, how much they're earning per hour, that productivity that is moving through there, like, how much money is that actually costing us when somebody is late, right? Or that time is not effective. And I also used to notice that I used to spend my time so many time in meetings that I actually didn't have the time to do the work, and that would start to create quite a lot of stress, like internally. And then we started, trying to do the work while we were in meetings. And it was quite interesting because I usually tend to get like straight to the point, like what is needed, and then try and make those meetings as short as possible, because I know that we have other things to do. So growing up very much in that very stringent, like, time needs to look like this, kind of a thing. And it's not right, it's not wrong. I'm just saying it serves some people, it doesn't serve others. And we were actually talking about, like, how fluid can we be with time, right? And then I ended up when we start moving from very much a 3D perspective, so very much that physical material, I mean, we'll always be 3D because our bodies are third dimensional in density, that it's our thought patterns start to grow and expand. I started to realize that we can actually play with time and expand time. And I found that to be quite interesting. And an example of that is, I remember taking my daughter to a doctor's appointment in town one day in Calgary, and a trip that usually takes 15, 20 minutes somehow. And I wasn't speeding. And I was like, I remember looking at the time and going, oh my God, look at the time. I was like, I know we left at this time, and we've just driven through the whole of downtown Calgary on the way out. I was like, how is it only this time? And she looks at me and she goes, oh, Mom, we've played with time. So I started to realize that time can be quite flexible. And I think that goes to that aspect of you talking about there's always time for the things that you want to do and that you need to do. And I've started to play with this a little bit, in that trusting that time, everything will happen in due time, which is, I find, quite interesting from the perspective of projects, people, meetings, cancellations, things like that. So I really don't get upset sometimes if people cancel or reschedule. It's because the timing's not right. And I'm always have time to do what needs to be done, or can fill that time quite easily. So I really don't get upset now. Whereas before I was like, what's going on?
Yeah.
It means that something else is greater is happening too. Have
Oh,
you
well.
experienced that?
Yeah, my unintentional journey with time. First of all, I'm a morning person,
Mm-hmm.
so I used to, in my 26 years in software engineering jobs, I would typically go in earlier than everyone else, and over time that just got earlier and earlier. Um, and I would, even to the extent that I would go in, uh, when I was at Amazon, I would go in for several years. I would go in about an hour early and record a song, and then I would
Mm-hmm.
start my work. I'd record it in the kitchen. There was a little music setup that we had, um, and I thought that was a really interesting boundary for me, because I'd said to
Mm-hmm.
myself, that's that's a non-negotiable thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it put pressure on me, but I felt like it was good. Like it always helped me start the day off to a good start. What I found with this trend of time management with me was I I'm a completer, so I still am,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I always felt like everything had to be done today, and that if I made any promise to anyone, that I always had to complete it, to fulfill that promise. And I found myself very quickly in situations where I felt more productive in meetings. I was more able to influence others better. So thinking back to when I was a customer support manager and I was trying to influence development teams to fix
Mm-hmm.
customer bugs, I found things like that like really important to be discussing face to face.
Mm-hmm.
And over time, especially my last maybe 3 or 4 jobs, um, in more of a corporate environment, I ended up in a situation where I would have more and more meetings. The last 8 years, it was like days, days and days of back to back meetings. And um, I'd learned this ability, I guess as a gift, which was to touch type during interviews, because I was in a company for 8 years where every interview you had to take extensive notes and then do a
Mm-hmm.
summary at the end. And I realized that it was a lot of effort to try and find the 30 minutes or 45 minutes after an interview. So quite
Mm-hmm.
quickly, I twigged that if I just type, if I'm able to keep eye contact, keep connected, really listen, and do a good job in the interview, then I can get faster and better at typing. And so I did. I would say it's pretty good. And actually, a lot of people didn't. I didn't really tell people who, when we got to interview panels, that I was doing this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the candidates knew; they could see me typing the whole time. Um, what it did for me, though, was it meant that I could then continue that during meetings. And what I
Mm-hmm.
became for many years was the guy like working through meetings. So I was
Mm-hmm.
constantly multitasking. The cognitive load was just insane. and
I can
and I
imagine.
don't and sometimes it made, like you were talking about larger meetings, like you're sat there quietly, you're listening to a lot of people or egos talking, and you're like,
Mm-hmm.
just let them kind of gas their way through the minutes and hours. I don't just sit there listening. I can just get on
Mm-hmm.
with work, um, especially remotely. But I also realized that it became like this habit of like, it kind of lowered my boundary. I'll just go into that meeting because I can just work. What
Mm-hmm.
difference does it make to me if I'm on a call or not? And of course, you always you're human. You get caught out, right? Someone to say, John, what do you think of that question? Are you going to answer that question? And you're like, like typing away. What I also didn't realize is, especially as I went through promotions and became a senior manager, the effect I was having on others around me unintentionally was that I was leading by example and saying, this is what you
Absolutely.
should do. You should like become a machine like Jon, like become a
Mm-hmm.
corporate machine. You can do everything all at once. But I always felt like I had enough time in a day to complete everything, but I would extend the day to complete.
Mm-hmm.
And that was also a bad habit. So yeah, I was obsessed by time, always wanted to be early or on time for meetings. Ended up in situations where I wouldn't even go to the toilet for several hours because I was
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I don't want to like be late for this meeting. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I became obsessed by time. And I also did this thing where in my calendar, and I still do it. I don't know why I do it. In my calendar, I would just take a to-do task and from my to-do list and I put it into the calendar. That's a 30-minute task. That's an hour task. And
Mm-hmm.
it has some, some strengths and some weaknesses. And the strength is you're unlikely to forget about something. You can time
Mm-hmm.
things. You can balance your workload.
Mm-hmm.
You can tell people, yeah, I've got time booked on Thursday for that. Unless something happens, that's when I'll be doing it. I'll be giving it to you on Friday or whatever. Um, but the downside is psychologically, you look at this calendar and you're like, oh, it's like
Uh,
it's full. And the feeling is like, I have no time. Look,
yeah.
I've got all these things. Even my calendar tells me
Yeah.
I have no time. And then color coding it and seeing that some things could be moved and were negotiable, and techniques like this needs to be done by this date. They're helpful, but yeah, I still got very just to the brink of burnout where I was realizing that
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't whatever it was that was fundamentally broken wasn't working, and that
Yeah.
I needed to really address root causes, not just become really good at
Mm-hmm.
managing the symptoms.
Absolutely beautiful. Yeah, no, I'm glad you shared that because I think we all go through that. And it's quite interesting because a lot of the times we tell our clients if you're going to put in self-care, schedule it into your calendar. So that's a positive way of how that works, but it's like schedule it in as a client because you're not likely to move a client where you are more likely to move aspects of yourself. But it's very interesting when you start looking at time wealth as much as financial wealth as well,
Mhm.
and looking at that aspect of, okay, you know, will I ever get that hour back? And I remember going to maybe a cinema and perhaps seeing a movie that completely wasn't in alignment and thinking to myself, I'm never going to get those 2 hours back,
Yeah.
you know, kind of a thing. But it is quite interesting when we start looking at that aspect of time to allow it to work for us. So a lot of the times I'm still working through that hesitation, and you've been lucky enough to like push me and give me that confidence to step out there and kind of like, doing lives and stuff like that. So now I use time in a different way. So for example, if I really want to achieve something, I will book that in. I will book that time. For example, I mean, between being a mom, 2 children, 2 chocolate labs, my mother, running 2 businesses. It's just like it can be a little bit crazy. And I want to study as well. So it's really becoming focused, and I think having a conscious aspect of, if I did have like 50 joules of energy, how much energy would I give to each thing so that I'm not depleted halfway through the day and that I can accomplish everything that I want to. But I've been interested in kind of like theosophy ever since I joined the Theosophical Society. And I was like, okay, I need to push my boundaries here and I need to start talking a little bit more. And so what I said to them is that, okay, I know I need to complete this task because it's a task for me. I tend to, even still today, push it to the side. So I said to them, okay, this is what I'm going to do. They're always needing speakers. So I'm like, this is going to be a win-win. I said to them, there are 9 modules. I can deliver a talk once a month. These are the topics that that are covered, and then I can create. So what I've done is I've scheduled in that time because I know I need to get those modules done and passed, because that will push me into that. And that is something that I really want to do. And I don't want to push that to the side. So I've almost created like a non-negotiable with myself, using the aspect of time to support that. And it's helping me to not sway. It becomes that priority, because that's the other thing. We always have time for the things we want to make time for, which is so important. And that is a lesson that I've kept with me throughout childhood, and saying no. And it's also when realizing that when people don't make time for you, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's knowing that it's okay. You might not be a priority, and that's okay. It's being okay with that is important. Or that subject, or that it's just not in alignment. So I've started adopting that, okay, all in divine timing, but at the same time actioning what we need to action and calling that forward, which I think is important. So that's how I play around with time a lot as well, in kind of like, okay, how can I make it work for me? And then scheduling that in for sure.
Fabulous. I would like to pause and reflect on, and I'm just going to like rattle off some rhetorical questions,
Go.
right? Because I'm not sure I know all the answers, but I know that there's questions that I need to ask myself and yourself and the audience. Is what is our obsession? These are a few questions. Like, firstly,
Yeah.
this obsession. Why do we have an obsession about having to be maxed out all the time? It seems to
Mm,
be some inherent desire to be busy, busy, busy bees, buzz, 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 like all day long. The other interesting thing is that we seem to think that some sort of work life balance maybe is culturally, we believe that it's something like Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, maybe it's 30, 40 hours and there's a weekend. Like, why? And why does everyone have to work at the same time? And why,
mm-hmm,
why, when none of us are the same, we're all unique. We all, um, we're morning people or midday people or later. We have different strengths and abilities. We have different places,
mm-hmm,
locations that we're more and less productive for different tasks, whether you're trying to
mm-hmm,
be, thinking bigger and innovative and inspirational, or whether you're just getting through a bunch of, you know, admin tasks with a cup of coffee, like whatever those things are that you do,
mm,
there's different times and places and headspaces that are really beneficial to focus on those. And I think somewhere under all of this is this innate ability that we haven't yet been able to decouple productivity with like self-love and self-care. And
mm-hmm,
and we've touched on that theme many times in our podcast. And I think it's helpful because when we think about that cause, which is kind of hiding in the background, right? It's like hiding somewhere behind our calendars, like, John, I love
yeah.
you. And it's like, no, I'll love myself when all this stuff is
The
done on
stuff
my
is done.
calendar.
Yeah.
And really, what we're being drawn back to is, yes, these constraints and boundaries are really helpful. Some of them are so powerful that they will
Mm-hmm,
shift and change your life. Um, and yet, at every stage of that journey of being able to more fluidly and more flexibly and in more um, sovereign and self-care led approach to the way that we work
mm-hmm,
and balance our lives is right down at the core of that is that self-love and self-care. And what would the version that loves you the most, so, and if you were to step outside of yourself for a moment and imagine that um you're you are your own partner, and you'd be looking at
mm-hmm.
I'd be looking at John going, John, like, you work a lot. Like, why? Even now, even though I run my own business, and sometimes I'm
Yeah.
saying to myself, John, I have no boss to complain to. Like, I've got myself. And so I'll sit myself down and I'll say, John, what what are you
What are you
doing?
doing?
We need to talk. Let's do a one on John, like one on one. It's like just me and me, and I talk. And so there's some reflections. I also wanted to uh, talk a bit about some of the changes that I've put in place that have helped, and I can see
Mm-hmm,
the trajectory that some of them are going. The first is just be really clear about my life mission. My life
mm-hmm,
mission is to help balance the light and dark in this planet, and help people on there. Often people are going through their spiritual awakening journeys at different
Mm-hmm.
stages. And it's to help support people and teach people on the journey. And what's really fascinating is that the less time I have that in my consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
the more time I spend on all the other things, the energy leaks, the annoying tasks that serve no purpose, the rabbit
Mm-hmm.
holes, the things that, oh, squirrel, squirrel, squirrel. I'm like
Yeah.
distracted. And what I've started to notice as well, that I'm most stressed when I'm and anxious when I'm out of alignment with that purpose.
Mm.
Now, you could be listening to Jon thinking, I don't know what he's talking about. His purpose, his mission sounds pretty woo-woo to me. And like frankly speaking, it doesn't matter. Everyone gets to choose
Yeah.
what your life purpose is. Do you want your dream life? Do you want your dream business? Do you want your dream work-life balance, dream partner? Like you
Mm-hmm.
choose, you get to choose. And the more you're spending time out of alignment with that
Mm.
purpose, the harder your life is and the more stressful everything seems, because it's like this underlying feeling of like, oh, I've got this thing to do. I've got to, like, I had to send an email for an event we're running on Sunday,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, oh, it's an admin task. I've got to do that. It feels like I should do it before we do this podcast recording. And then I remember when I started, it's like, it is in alignment. Like
Mm-hmm.
I reflect on, it's like, this is totally, we're going to get 12 people in a room together and we're going to do these readings and healings and clearings for people. Like this is totally in alignment with what I want to do. And I started to get excited about it. It's like, I've
Mm-hmm.
got like and we, by the way, we've sold out. Just
Oh,
I got
brilliant.
an email just before
Thank you. We
um,
started.
just before we started. And it's like, oh, actually I can see that the time doesn't really matter if I just hit save and wait until after the podcast recording. I don't think it's going to make a difference to the customers whether they get an email from me about whether or not they want to come in fancy dress because it's Halloween. And I realized, but it feels in alignment and it feels like I should do it today. And if not, it's okay. And I don't, as long as and then I also check through the day. So I have this, instead of just blocking my calendar with all these to do things that I thought were good in the past, like past version of
Mm-hmm.
Jon said, do this, future Jon. Um, I have this little, it's a short list as well, maybe scarily short for some people.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's maybe about 10 items, and I spend about half my day in and out of it. And it's a priority list, the things that I think will have the biggest impact on the number of people I can reach
Mm-hmm.
on my mission to help people. And I swap things in and out. And when I'm in and out, it's just a little list in a little Google Doc. When I'm in and out of it, it gives me a lot of joy because I know that I'm challenging myself to am I working on the right thing for people?
Mm-hmm.
And it also has like this self-care thing as well. And it says halfway through that list of 10 things, it says, Jon, how can I show myself that I love myself more and more each day? And it's like
Mm-hmm.
it's like constantly, I'll be like, oh, I'll go and do all this. It's like, oh yeah, but I still need to love myself, Jon. Like, if you did that, are they all in alignment? Like you can't just burn yourself out on your life mission. You have to keep loving yourself. You have to keep a happy life. You're a
Mm-hmm.
father, a parent, and I have many other hobbies. And it's like, yeah, it's really important to achieve that. I'd love to hear from you, Natasha, about your journey with time and energy.
Yeah, absolutely. And those are some really, really, really good questions. And I think in general, I think it comes down to like conditioning and that aspect of being busy equals self-worth, self-importance, all the rest of that. And yeah, so absolutely, I understand that. And finding that work-life balance is quite interesting because what does that mean to some of us, right? And I try and play with time. Not I try, I do play with time. I'm trying to eliminate the word try. You either do or you don't.
Yeah.
So I have been playing with that. But one thing that I've also spent a lot of time is in observation. And I start to notice that I might shift into this kind of like, okay, I need to be spontaneous. And it's quite interesting because a lot of the times I always leave space for agility to
Mm-hmm.
respond, to be able to be spontaneous within that as well, so that we don't miss the opportunities. And I think that's a huge part in manifesting, in the sense of when we become too fixed on what things need to look like, we miss out on opportunities that could be presenting themselves because we expect things to look a certain way or another. And so I've started leaving that time for agility because of looking into that. Okay, what brings me the most joy today? What allows me to do that? I mean, I think after one of our podcasts, I think it was with Mario. It's a beautiful sun was shining in Scotland and
Yeah.
it wasn't
Yay.
raining. And I was like, oh my goodness, I am needing to take advantage of this time at this moment to really bring in that aspect of self-care and clarity. And I am going to walk, to the beach, and Cramon's the closest one to me. And I just sat by a river, and the peace that I got from that helped me to be so much more productive. But I built in that agility. And the beautiful thing, going back to what you were talking about earlier, is when COVID hit, it was one of the things when I checked into the Akashic records. One of the beautiful things that those 2 years gave us that opportunity is to manage our time, where we started to realize, wait a minute, you know, what is this balance? Now, all of a sudden, I've weeded out or had to weed out all these extras. What do I do with my time? And when am I more productive? And I found it quite interesting because I'd always seen a timeline where we would have more people contracting rather than people being employed, because it would be like, can you get this job, this project done? How long is it going to take? And the person would say, I can do that in X amount of time and then deliver that project. And that person would decide whether they do it in the morning, whether they do it at midnight, whether they do 2 hours one day, 20 hours the next day. But it gave them that own manageability to create that within
Mhm.
that time. And it was quite interesting when I started seeing that, no, you must work from the office from 9 to 5. And I was like, this is so restrictive because of that. So I have a second business that I work with, a friend of mine, Kellyanne Vass. And it's so interesting because we are polar opposites in so many ways. I'm a morning person, she's an evening person, right? And she's very detail orientated. I am also bigger picture, although I look at details in a different perspective. And we've just got like all of these things. And she was saying, I need to become a morning person. I was like, why?
Yeah.
Embrace that aspect of being an evening person, because that's what expands you the most. That's where you're most creative in the world. Like, yeah, I get up, we catch each other at like, I'm at 4 a.m. She's at like 11 o'clock p.m. the night before. So because she's in Canada, so there's like a 7 hour time difference. But it's like, really, let's work to those strengths, right? And I was just like, it's so interesting that we're like, we should embrace these things. I heard a statistic that it's actually in our DNA, whether we're morning person or evening people. And I
Mhm.
think 10% of humanity is like an evening person, because these were the people that sat up at night and kept us safe while we all slept.
Yeah.
Whereas the morning person would be up to go out there and to hunt and gather, to make sure we got out there at the crack of dawn to, get things going. So it was quite interesting from that perspective in embracing, because I think that by forcing somebody to work that 9 to 5, you're missing a whole potential of creativity and productivity where that person could be doing it from 10 to 12 or 10 to 3, right? So that fluidity of time started to kind of like dissipate, which is so interesting for me to see. And in saying that, I spent some time with one of the elders in Six Nations, and I was telling you about this, where I got a big lesson in the sense that, you know, we did a trade where I learned about how to set up a sweat and all these sorts of things, which was absolutely beautiful, the teachings, and it was such an honor to be there. And then I trade where I teach Akashic records. So I was like, okay, we're going to teach Akashic records from this day to this day, from this time to that time. And it would get to that time and I'd be ready. I had everything printed on the tables, like, let's go. and the first person came in 20 minutes later, sat down, had their lunch, their breakfast, teas, coffees, and I'm like, okay, this is okay. I'm going with this. I'm learning, how this works. And then the next person came in a little bit later, and I think we only ended up starting at 11. But that was the right time for everybody to start at that time, because everybody was physically, mentally, emotionally ready to receive that
Yeah.
information. So it wasn't forced. And I learned such a big lesson in that aspect, which allowed me now to be more fluid with time and more forgiving, because I grew up in a very restrained way of, this is how it needs to look like. And I think
Yeah.
it's really finding that balance in there somewhere, because we need to put in that time. Okay, around about this time is when we meet. And I'm also very conscious of that when I am doing my one-on-one sessions, that I start on, I try and start and finish within that time, because it's like honoring the time of that person and my own and my next client. So it becomes quite important how is trying to find that balance of being, time wealthy. And then I've started asking myself, when I get asked the question, hey, are we able to do this, or can I do that? And I start looking at, like you say, what brings me the most amount of joy? What is most in alignment with my passion and purpose? Because
Mhm.
what I find is a lot of us are really good at doing many things. And a lot of the times, because we are good at that, we get asked by other people to do those things. And a lot of the times it's like, hang on a minute, this isn't part of my passion and purpose, even though I know how it can be done. Right. And it's kind of like letting that go and saying, okay, this is your passion, this is your purpose, this is how I'd approach it. Here are the tools, go away and do it, instead of doing it for them. And it's like they
Yeah.
say in an office, if you want something done, you give it to the busiest person, because you'll know it will get
That's
done,
right. Yeah.
right?
Be even busier.
Even busier. So that's my playing around with time in that sense, and honoring time, and being really looking at time with a filter of agility,
Yeah.
to be able to move through that, and creating at the same time creating those healthy boundaries, so that we aren't sitting here waiting for 3-4 hours when we could have been doing something else.
Definitely. I was reflecting on like my corporate experiences, especially in a global corporate where, project after project, product after
Mm-hmm.
product, team after team, and we would be delivering, excuse me, really hard projects. Some of them were multi-year, and never at the end when we presented our results did we get questions from our leaders or even customers saying, what was the work pattern for your team?
Mm-hmm.
Where did they work? Like, what hours did they work? Were they online? Were they in the office 9 to 5 or 10 to 10, or like what? Like, what made this so successful for you?
Mm-hmm.
Or were the things that you felt constrained by, that you felt that actually you could have done this quite differently?
Mm-hmm.
And I was reflecting on the around the pandemic. So after, like, that opened up huge changes for us, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
everyone got to use video conferencing. Everyone got
Mm-hmm.
to get comfortable with working in different locations. And you started to see people going, oh, I could go for a walk in nature at lunch, and I don't have to
Yeah.
be in a an industrial estate or in a an urban setting. I can go off and just do whatever I want for my lunch break, or immediately after work I can put my tools down and I can just go with my family.
Mm-hmm.
And my dog loved it. uh he's loving it right now. And then it changed, and then companies decided, many, that they would want people to come back into the office. And those constraints, I must admit, I'm still like unprogramming, deprogramming some of those. And some of those explorations for me have been, there's days, often a Thursday, I'll go in my camper van down to the nearby beautiful Belhaven Beach, and I'll do quite
Mm-hmm.
a lot of walks during the day, 4 or 5 walks. There'll be time for about 2 hours or so for a nap, or just lazing and staring at the beach, or whatever it is I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing. and it's like a really creative time. It seems to be a time where I receive the most customer orders as well, which is really fascinating, right? Like when you're making
Mhm.
that space, you know, no one would say to you logically, they would say, "Are you napping enough? Because these sales need to go up," you know, and yet it is a
Oh.
beautiful
Mhm.
ability. It's a practice of receiving. Um, and I also like you, like learning this, like what works for you. I find a really beautiful, fun exploration. Like where are
Mhm.
the places where you feel um, most able to focus on that particular task, and
Mhm.
treat your self care and your self love practices. For me, it'd be like skateboarding on a Friday morning. I love because less people around to bump into, and I get slightly less. I feel slightly less awkward about it. And there's also those times of day, like I love a nature walk at lunch, and I love if I want to really spend time on those bigger things, part of my mission. Like, John, what should I be doing? A retreat in the US? Should I be launching a new
Mhm.
app? Should I be like, what do I feel guided to do next? And feeling it, like spending time with that feeling, not just coming up
Mhm.
with a plan and, oh, there was a past version of me a year ago that said this was a good idea, so I'm just going to do it. Like, and I'm
Yeah.
still living it. Um, and I feel a lot of the time, in fact, I was chatting with, hello to you, you know who you are. If I was chatting with an ex colleague this morning, messaging them, and I said, like, you're in a golden handcuff situation, as my
Mhm.
son described it to me, as he described me before I left my corporate job, which is like, you're bound. At what point does the gold in those handcuffs become, um, not worth the constraint of the handcuff itself?
Mhm.
And first of all, seeing that you're constrained, like you're
Mhm.
absolutely constrained by your manager, by the company that you work for, where they want you to work, the times they want you to work. Now, it's not to say that you should just give up and say, well, hey, I'm constrained. I'm in handcuffs. I should leave. Like, you don't have to, right? You can at
Mhm.
least start by seeing it and seeing, as you were saying, Natasha, so powerfully that there's unique aspects of you
Mhm.
that are feeling friction because they're being told by others. You're allowing others outside of you to constrain that and say, John, be an evening person. It's like, I'm never going to be that evening person. I'm
No.
I'm on a sofa in the evening, or I'm sleeping. Like I'm not.
Mhm.
I'm up at 5 a.m. every day, and I do huge amounts. Whether it's running and writing songs or working, like it's all these things I love
Mhm.
doing in the morning. Don't try and make me like normalize my superpowers. um,
Yeah.
and I feel it's so powerful to push the envelope a bit, like, talk to your manager, talk to your customers and say,
Mhm.
my pitch is, my proposal is like, give me this project and I'm going to do it differently and let the results
Mhm.
speak for themselves. Like we're humans, not robots. And
Yeah.
we all have unique superpowers. And together, like project teams are never just like developer one, two, and three, project manager one
Yeah.
and two, manager one. It's like we're not. We're
Yeah.
all a collection of humans, all with unique superpowers who like working
Mhm.
different times of day. We are strengths and some strengths and the more strategic and thinking big and
Yeah.
giving great direction, and others like just doing the grind work. And it's like
Mhm.
when you play to everyone's strengths, you're able to, like, those illusions of time and even those constraints themselves just melt, right? They're like, you can race at things and you'll feel that joy in your heart. You feel like, actually, I do feel like this is in alignment with what I want to do with my life or not. And then you can decide whether you want to be constrained or not.
Absolutely. No, I absolutely agree to that because not only does it become more productive and more creative, there is an aspect of doing it a lot faster because you're not needing to rethink, right? Like if your brain comes on at 10 p.m. and you're trying to do this at 10 a.m., it's going to be harder and heavier and longer, in order to be able to really get into the flow of things. Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. So, especially when it comes to industries where you're facing the public, at 4 or 5 a.m., like at an airport before you're about to get onto a flight, kind of a thing. It's pretty brutal if you're not that person to be all like welcoming and open and exciting, right? If somebody had to say to me, you have to do like the 4 a.m. shift to whatever, I'd be like, I'm in. you know, and I'd be that annoying person that'd be like, welcome, how can I support you today? You know, kind of a thing. And a lot of the times I won't book a session after a certain time because I don't feel that I am giving the capacity of 100 because my joules of energy are running pretty low.
Mhm.
And I think it would be giving that person, that client, a disservice, and it wouldn't feel authentically like me to be able to do that. And that is one thing that I moved for through kind of like saying, I wouldn't be the best person for you at this time, but I can schedule you in somewhere else
Yeah.
that I would be able to give you 100% of what I have to offer in my gift. And I think that is important because it's like you say, it's looking at the constraints and seeing if they work for you, because sometimes it brings people comfort to know that this and this and that process. But I think that takes that time and exploration and giving yourself permission to look at how do I function best? When do I function best? And then allowing that, like you say, instead of somebody saying you have to do it from 9 to 5, 8 to 4, whenever that is, but turning around and going, hey, I'm more creative at this time. I'm going to start then, you know, and I'm going to, like you say, I'm going to trust me to do this a little bit differently because I know my superpowers. And I think a lot of the times we don't know what our superpowers are until we start or want to admit them, because sometimes it's like, oh, it doesn't go, it's not in alignment with what everybody else is doing, right? And we kind of like just want this acceptance or to be normal or to do whatever it is that we wanting to do. And the other thing is things change throughout our lives, and it's being
Yeah.
able to adapt to that, because I wasn't a morning person when I was a teenager, right? I was like, I didn't need sleep in my 20s because I was like, who needs sleep when you're like between 20 and 30? And then afterwards, you're like, okay, hang on a minute, my body's changed. This is how I function best and where I find my peace, which I think is quite important. And I think technology has also had a big influence because no longer do we just work 9 to 5, but having access to our email, to our messages 24/7, it takes big boundaries to actually say, no, I am switching off right now. I am switching off this weekend. I am not answering emails, or I'm a little bit slower at getting back to people because I am having that balance that I'm needing to create to replenish my batteries to be of service in that way. And I think there's a misconception of it's not just a work hard, play hard. There's a rest hard. There's a third part of that that comes
Mhm.
in to be able to allow that cycle. So that triangle I found, and a lot of the message that I've been getting is like, yeah, work hard, play hard, but you need to bring in that rest hard. Ooh, I
Wow,
think they
rest hard.
agree.
Yay. That's so
So
cool.
so absolutely. So I think that needs to come into play. So whereas maybe in my 20s I didn't need as much rest as I need now, but it's understanding and making time for the things that you want to make time for is important.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Um, that those moments, those magical moments where your superpowers shine
Mm-hmm.
are really the opportunities for you to like challenge yourself and say, what did I do? How do I feel when I allowed that to happen? I felt joy in my
Mm-hmm.
heart at that time. I created something. It felt like time just melted away from me. It didn't matter about the time. And you know, some of our 3D constructs are so broken. You know, like
Mm-hmm.
people don't actually, companies, customers, they don't really care. Although they'll put a huge amount of effort into saying that they do, but they literally don't care how something is done. And yet, all we do is obsess each day when we're working in companies saying, "Oh, like my manager cares," or you know, they gave this date, you know, and they said that's important. So you know, I don't let them down, and they've told our customers I don't let my customers down, and then whenever I don't, you know, keep on track for that date, I feel so bad. And that I love what you're saying about talking to your customers and saying like, would you really want like a meditation with a meditation teacher or practitioner when they literally like kind of jump into like, hi, oh, it's such a busy
Yeah.
day. Oh, just one moment. Just hi, yeah, just yeah, I'm on a customer call. All right, and
Yeah.
the energy. I even hate listen to myself. It's like that energy is just, I know you're here physically, but I'm not sure that your energy is really here with me. And I would prefer a session when you're like in your prime, like
Mm-hmm.
in your prime of your energy, and and the cultivation of your energy. I've realized is just so important. Now, I did
Mm-hmm.
question that example of sending a an event email, 10 or 15-minute task just before the podcast today. And I stopped for a moment and I said, what's your energy going to be like, Jon? Because you don't have long. You're going to feel rushed. Is that going to come across when the person consumes that email, going, oh, I'm coming along to this event I'm excited about. Oh, this is strange. Like, why is Jon saying like you got to do this and this and this and this and park here and do these times and this thing's happening and in
Mm-hmm.
the same location at the same time? Like, you don't want any of that. You just want it to be like nice and simple. It's just a polite note. The energy should feel light, and
Mm-hmm.
you don't want to create something from a place of lack. I don't have much time for you as a customer, so I'm going to send you something that also doesn't have much time and it's going to be a bit
Mm-hmm.
jarring for you to read. And especially in this domain that we or domains that we work in, Natasha, where it's like
Mm-hmm.
our customers are super sensitive, and I mean
Yeah.
that by in a strong, powerful way to energy. And
Yeah.
the world's becoming more and more like that. So when you're running around in this chaotic thing, I wanted to say this joke my wife and I constantly make. I'm sure it comes from her. Is she'll say, whenever I say I, I'm busy today, she goes
Mm-hmm.
busy, busy, busy bee, bzz, bzz, bzz. And I say yes, so busy, 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 and it's so funny laughing at busyness. And
Yeah.
the word itself is crazy, right? It's like busyness. Like, why is
Yeah.
that business? Why is busyness business? It's not,
Business.
right?
Yeah.
Um, Business is really about us, creating for ourselves and for others. And
Absolutely.
the symptom of being a busy bee, I'm sure bees have got it a lot, their acts together a lot better than us humans, but
Yeah.
just the just being a busy fool and
Mm-hmm.
busying yourself is the perfect way to burn yourself out and then be burnt out and be so confused about what just happened in my life. Like,
Mm-hmm.
where did I go wrong? And yeah, whenever I feel any of that, and I love your little fireworks and triangle of like coming back to resting hard. It's like
Mm-hmm.
you can also look back and say, well, how much rest did I manage to get in this week or this month? And
Mm-hmm.
was my phone off when I was resting? Was my attention on myself? Was I open energetically to receive that rest, not just kind of crashing and burning and
Mm-hmm.
jumping in and out of states of frenzies. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, I definitely resonate. My day to day is like that. It's like
Mm-hmm.
I have about 3 hours. I don't really know what I'm doing. Might go for a long walk. Might have a nap.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
have some customer sessions a bit later on, and I know that they'll benefit from me like resting hard, because they'll get much better
Mm-hmm.
sessions. Um,
Absolutely.
and and if something else happened, I wouldn't want to turn up and say, uh, you know, right, let's do meditation together. And it was a jarring experience that I feel would be terrible.
I agree. And even for those people that aren't quite into this, they will feel the energy.
Mm,
Still, they just won't understand where it's coming from, but it will just be like, oh, kind of a thing. Like I've just gotten this email and like what, and you would read the tone of the energy that is
mm,
coming through. But you're absolutely right about that. But what I'm also trying to do is become more present in
yeah,
that aspect, and it's really learning to switch off and just kind of like become more focused. I think that I'm finding myself, and just go back to what you were saying, like I sometimes get a lot of texts and there's that I need to get that back to that person,
yeah,
and I'd be super short like, yes, I've got it, yes it is, let's go. And then be like, oh my goodness, you must be super busy. And I'd just be like, no, I need to. In general, I'm not fluffy.
Mhm.
So on top of that, and being busy, it's just
Yeah.
like, oh, so yeah, I've learned to be like, wait, I'm going to put it on hold, and then I'm like, okay, let's look at that when I can respond fully and presently,
Yeah.
which is important, I think, within that. But I think this, I will continue to work on tweaking my approach and my observation of time,
Mhm.
because I do find myself kind of like stepping into those old habits. And like you say, there I am again. It's like, oh my God, my calendar is full. Why is my calendar full? Oh, because I've gone into this lack, either lack of time or kind of like, oh my goodness, lack of money and time. So interchanged into that. And then it's kind of like, and then you find yourself in that hamster wheel into old patterns again, going, wait, it looks like I'm doing busy work, not quality work. Like, let's see what we can do. And that's the other thing is that where we focus our attention on is what we create. And sometimes if we do have our attention on many things, the energy is just scattered.
Yeah.
And it's like, we're so confused. What are you doing? Because you always
Yeah.
look so busy because you're doing a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of that, and it's like we don't know what you're doing. So it's, yeah,
And
it's very interesting.
and our families, ourselves, our loved ones, our customers, they deserve the best
Mm-hmm.
of us, right?
Mm-hmm.
We deserve the best of us. And yeah, being a busy bee just for the sake of it, and often responding to feelings of lack or lack of self-worth
Mm-hmm.
or self-love, will just burn you out. And I love the fun exploration of just trying new ways of doing it. One thing I did last night was I got about 10 messages from customers, and I was like, I must, like, this feeling, I must
Mm-hmm.
respond immediately. And actually I looked at them like they don't expect a response tonight. Like they know I'm in the UK, they're in the US,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll be responding anyway before they wake up.
Yeah.
Just put it in your calendar, Jon, or write a list and then say at the right times of the day I'll respond to these
Mm-hmm.
in a timely manner, and set that boundary. And you have to decide, right? You have to say, am I available? Is the
Mm-hmm.
best version of me available like 24/7? Not really. Is the
No.
best version of me like available at specific times for specific tasks because they work best for me and I shine the most in
Mm-hmm.
for that task, for that person, in that moment, in that location? And when you get more yeses, you know that, yeah, that feels right. I'm gonna do better for others when I focus on doing the right thing for me.
Interestingly enough, when I'm busy in the sense of in alignment with my passion and my purpose, like I can sleep 4 hours and wake up completely rested, completely ready
Yeah.
to go, but it's in focus, it's in flow, it's in alignment, it's expansive.
Mm.
And it's amazing that kind of busy, I suppose, it in the expanded way rather than the depleted way, in a kind of like, I must do this in this way. But if it's in alignment with that, I find it to be
It's energizing.
empowering
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and energizing, because you don't need
Yeah.
that much sleep. You're just like, it's almost like you're running on this perpetual energy that keeps you motivated, which I find quite exciting.
Fabulous. Well, why don't we do a mindfulness meditation on
Perfect.
exactly this topic? And
Yes.
it's going to be fun to see the time that it takes as well. um, so yeah, we'll do this,
Okay.
and then we'll let everyone get on with the rest of their tasks and their busy
Mm-hmm.
days or their busy rests. So
Mm-hmm.
if you'd like to join me now, we'll begin by taking in 3 deep breaths in through the nose, nice and deep, and breathe out any stress or anxiety nice and loud. Breathe in through the nose, nice and deep, and breathe out any lack, fear, or shame nice and loud. And breathe in through the nose, nice and deep. And breathe out any remaining low vibration, low energy emotions, nice and loud. Bring your awareness to your whole body at this time. And just scanning down through each aspect of your body, checking in to see how you're feeling through your head and shoulders. Imagining perhaps in colors or energy or sound that your body's talking back to you, saying what aspects of your head or shoulders feel stressed or relaxed. Are they happy, sad, or somewhere in between? And just continue this scan down through your shoulders and upper body, your chest. Do your lungs feel nice and filled with air and open? Or are they short on breath? Continuing out down to your fingertips and continuing down through to your waist and to the base of your spine. Checking in on your body. You giving your space you need in your body for your digestion to continue at the right pace for you? Are you hydrated enough? And coming all the way out down the legs, down to the toes, your whole feet. Are there any aspects of you that feel a bit stiff and achy, or perhaps there's blocked energy and you're ready to get up and move? Maybe you're ready to take a short break after this. And knowing that we can always just take a moment, as we can do just now, and place our left hand on our hearts and take one deep breath and breathe out and ask our bodies, how do we feel right now? And allow your body to speak to you, to your heart, to your mind. And then with this feeling, holding this in your mind and in your heart, I'd like you to reflect on the rest of your day today, whatever time it is, whatever's ahead of you. And imagine if you had a calendar with an hour by hour slot of what tasks you're doing for the rest of the day. Imagine your body could write this. Imagine your body would say, at 1 p.m., I felt good after a lovely walk in nature. After 2 p.m., I felt relaxed and excited after a meeting with colleagues and ready to progress my tasks. At 3 p.m., I took a break. I enjoyed chatting with others. It helped fill my heart with joy. At 4 o'clock, I was thinking about what are the things that I need to tie up, wrap up for the end of the day. By 5 o'clock, you began to realize that tomorrow's tasks would love to be dictated by your body, and that you would like to achieve all that you achieve in your work by first listening to your body and allowing your body to guide you. And at the end of each day, imagine the feeling if you're able to decouple, to disconnect the calendar itself, all the tasks that you create for yourself and that your customers and your managers and colleagues create for you, that you're able to disconnect them from your self-love and self-worth. And at the end of each day, as you leave your work, you leave your office, your home office, you leave wherever you work, close that laptop lid, and you say to yourself, I love myself. I love you, body, regardless of how productive I have been in my tasks. For I know that my self-love is my capacity for productivity. And each morning when you start your day, take time to reflect on why it is you came into this life and what it is you'd like to do and achieve with this life, your dream life. And this includes your partner, your family, your friends, your loved ones, your pets, your business, every aspect of your dream life. It's yours to choose. And so each morning, maybe take 10 minutes and reflect on what it is that you really want. And does the rest of your day reflect this? Does it really reflect what you want? Does it give you time to allow your superpowers to step out and shine, to explore through the day the different things that fuel your body with love and enjoyment and excitement, and those things that do not feel in alignment, work out the ways to end them or phase them out, to communicate with others about proposals that you would like to change them, to remove constraints, and just allow these cycles each day to continue to bring you back to your heart, back to your self-love on your journey to your dream life, living it more and more in every present moment. I'd like you to hold that liberating feeling in your heart for as long as you choose to, and bring you now back to your body, back to this moment. When you're ready, you can move and open your eyes.
Thank you for that, Jon.
Thank you. I think I was starting to cry. It was beautiful.
It's funny, as soon as you said disconnect from your calendars, I felt like, the Matrix where you get plugged into those. I was just like, I was like, whoa, how connected am I still? A little bit of work that still needs to be done there.
Oh, I love
and
that.
then excitement to do the work this afternoon. Like, yes, do it. Oh, thank you for that,
Fabulous.
Jon.
Well, thank you. And thank you for another wonderful podcast. If you're interested in joining us on our podcast, we do have more exciting guests coming up. And you can just let us know. There's details in our podcast descriptions. You'll find us on YouTube, where you see the video too, on Spotify, Apple, and Amazon, and many other platforms. And we're excited to get people from all walks of life, no matter what your job, even whether you work or don't, of any age. And we love, the topics we love talking about, but we're also open to exploring more. So please do get in touch if you're interested. And yeah, excited to continue on this journey. So thank you so much, Natasha. Thank you, everyone, for watching. And we're sending love to everyone. And we'll see you again in our next Mindfulness Leadership podcast. Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.